Welcome to Creating and Sharing Custom Automation Tools. In this lesson, you'll learn to create and share your custom creations with your colleagues. By creating and sharing your AutoCorrect, AutoText, and macro creations, your team can draw from dictionaries and clause libraries to work quickly, write effectively, and produce consistently. Sharing means you work as a team and write with one voice. This episode is part 2 of a 2-part video on reusable text. We'll cover features which are available for Microsoft Word for Windows or Mac. Hello, and welcome to Creating and Sharing Custom Automation Tools. This is part 2 of a 2-part lesson on macros and reusable text. Today we'll cover AutoCorrect, AutoText, Quick Parts, and macros. I'm Ivy Gray from WordRake, and I'm with Baron Henley from Affinity Consulting. Ready, Baron? Take it away.
Okay, in this class, we're going to talk about sharing these custom automation tools that we discussed in a previous class, specifically AutoCorrect, AutoText, Quick Parts, and macros. So there are ways of sharing those things with other people in your office. And many times once people create those things, the first thing that occurs to them is they'd like to install those same things on everyone else's computer in their office. So this is a little bit nerdy, but if you'll bear with me, I think it's understandable. And there's a few things we'll just have to get squared away up front so that you can access the places you need to go to in order to share things like this. So first of all, there is a special folder in Word that if I put a template inside this folder, and the folder, by the way, is called the startup folder, startup like that. So Word has this special folder buried on your computer called startup. And if I create a template which contains macros or AutoCorrect or AutoText, I can save those things into that template. And if I put that template inside the startup folder in Word, then all of those features become available to me automatically when I launch Word. So basically, I could create this one file that contains all of these things, and then I could drop it into a particular folder on each user's computer in my office, and then they would have access to the same things, okay? So the problem is, by default, you cannot browse to the startup folder. It's a hidden folder in Windows. So in order to access that, so you will be able to see it, we need to do one thing first. So we need to go to File Explorer in Windows. And if you don't know how to get there, there's multiple ways. One way is to hold down on the Windows logo key in the bottom left-hand corner of your keyboard, and then tap E for Explorer. That opens this up. I'm sure you've seen this before. Another way to get there is to right-click your Start button and choose File Explorer down here in the corner. Or you might have an icon for it that looks like this, in which case you can just click the icon. But in any event, you need to launch the File Explorer. And here's the first thing we got to do. So we're able to access this particular folder where startup is. And that is you click on the View ribbon, and then there's a little checkbox right here for hidden items. I would also check file name extensions. Neither of these two boxes are checked by default, but you need to see your hidden items because the startup folder is presently under a folder structure that is hidden. And you would like to see the file name extension. So in other words, you'll see .docx or .pdf, or whatever the suffix is of the file you're looking at, which Windows by default hides from you. I would argue that that's a terrible idea not to know what your extension is, but that's Windows default position. So if you check these two boxes, that's all you got to do. Okay, if you want to know where your startup folder is, then here's how you can find out for sure. I'll show you where it normally is, but here's how you can find out for sure. You go to the File menu in Word and down to Options, bottom left corner. Then you click on the Advanced tab on the left side. Then scroll all the way down until you see a button that says File Locations. If you click on that, you will see an option here for this startup folder. And if you click Modify, it'll show you. Okay, so as you can see, my logon name is BKHEN. So it'll be users, C:/users whatever your logon name is, / app data. App data is a hidden folder. So app data and all the subfolders under it by default are hidden. You couldn't even see it unless you did the thing I just showed you to show hidden items. Then roaming, then Microsoft, then Word, then startup. Okay, so that is the location on my computer where my Word startup folder is. So if I want to create this special template that holds macros and other stuff, then I need to stick it in the startup folder. All right. So armed with that information, make note of that. I'll just cancel out of this. What I want to do first is create a template to hold these things. So I'm just going to create a blank document, and I would call this like shared items or something like that. So I'm going to go File menu and down to Save As, and then Browse. And here's the most important part. Save As type down here. You want to switch from Word document, I'm going to zoom in on this, to Word macro enabled template. Macro enabled template. It's very important that you choose that. It has a suffix of .dotm, as you can see. So I choose that. Now, when I'm setting this up, I'll probably just store it on my desktop until I get it all set up. So I'll put it on my desktop for now, and I'll call it, shared items. Okay. So far, I've created a template that contains nothing called shared items, and it is specifically a macro-enabled template. So it has to have the suffix of .dotm. Now I can store things in this. Okay, so I'm going to remove this little button. So let me show you how to do first a macro. So let's say I want to have a macro. I want to store the macro in this template. As you're going to see, you actually have a choice as to where you store your macros. And let's say that my macro is going to insert the file and path name. Okay, so here's how I would do that with, I'm not going to do a macro, I just want to show you where I'm going to do this. So I'm going to go Insert, Quick Parts, Field, File name is the particular field I want. I'm going to make it lowercase, and I want to add the path. And then I click OK. Okay, so you can see what it inserted there. And further, I want to select it, and I want to shrink its point size. So I'm going to do, so when you're recording a macro, by the way, it doesn't know, like if I went up here and switch this to like 10 point, it may not record that. However, there's a speed key for reduce a font by 1 point or increase a font by 1 point. And it's the control key and then the square bracket. So the left square bracket makes it smaller and the right square bracket makes it 1 point bigger. So that's just a handy little tip to know in any event. If you want to just kind of eyeball something and make it big enough where it looks good in the document, you don't really know what point size that is, select it and hit control right square bracket until it's the size that you want. Anyway, what I'm going to do is shrink it down to like 8 point. All right. So now that I've explained what we're going to do with this macro, I'm going to record it. So I go to the view ribbon, macro, and I'm going to go down to the bottom of the macro button. Don't forget the bottom you have to click, not the top. And I go down to record macro. And I'll call this, insert file and path name. And because this is going to be mixed in a bunch of a ton of other macros, I'm going to put an AAA in front of the file name, or the macro name, so I can find it easy. It'll be alphabetized at the top of the list. All right. And then let's say the button, I'm going to make a button for this. So I'm going to click on button. And here's my button, but here's the really important thing. See right here, it says customize the quick access toolbar for all documents. You need to switch that to the template you're working on for shared items. So I'm going to put this button inside the shared items template that I'm working on right now. So I pick this, I add it, I modify it, I give it I'll give it a smiley face, and I'll call this file and path name. And I click OK, and I click OK. It is now recording my keystrokes. So I go Insert, Quick Parts, field, file name, lowercase, add the path name, click OK. My cursor is blinking at the end of that, as you can see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Shift Home, and then I'm going to shrink it by hitting Control left square bracket. So right now I'm at 12 points, so this will be 11, 10, 9, 8. Okay, so that's going to be my macro. Now I need to stop recording. So I go to the View ribbon and back to macro and down to stop recording. Okay, so this macro is actually stored inside the template I'm working on called shared items. And the button that I added here is also inside this particular template. Now, if I had assigned a speed key to that macro, then the speed key would also be inside this particular template. Now, in order to share this with other people, this template needs to be located inside that startup folder that I mentioned earlier. So what I can do here, and the same thing is true, like if let's say I wanted to create an AutoText entry, and my AutoText entry is going to be, let's find some text. I'll just do a test one. So we'll call it test, test, test. I'm going to make an AutoText entry out of this. All right. So I'm going to select that, and I'm going to click my AutoText button and go down to Save to the AutoText gallery. And notice where it's saving. Save in shared items. So it's also saving this AutoText entry in my shared items template. So I'm just going to call this test. Okay, I click OK. I'm going to select all this and delete it. I'm going to save my template, and I'm going to close my template. Okay, now I want you to notice that the little smiley face button disappeared. That's because that only lives inside that template. And if I click my AutoText entries, there's none in here called test, like the one I just created, right? So the question is, okay, how would I make it show up? And the answer is, I need to take that template I just saved on my desktop, and I need to put it in that special startup folder. So I'm going to exit Word all the way. Don't save. Don't save. Okay. So here's my shared items template that I stored on my desktop. So I'm going to right click and copy it. Then I'm going to go to that folder that I mentioned earlier. So that is going to be C, users, your logon name, app data, roaming, Microsoft, Word, and here's my startup folder right there. So I go in here and I right click and I paste. Okay, you can see I've got some other, these are called, by the way, global templates. If they're in your startup folder, then when you launch Word, any macros or AutoText entries that are stored inside that template become available to the user. So to share this with other people, I would just go around to their computers and put this one file in their startup folder. So now when I launch Word, Word will now incorporate those things in. So I'm going to see the smiley face button reappear, hopefully, once Word finally gets done figuring itself out here. Okay, as you can see, I've got my smiley face. So if I click on this, you can see it. Now this is an unsaved document, so it didn't put in. Let me go ahead and save it. Actually, let's say I save this to my desktop, and we'll call it our fun test file. Okay. Now I'm going to run the same thing again. See how I put in fun test file. C users bkhin desktop fun test file.docx. So that worked. And if I click on my AutoText entry, but my AutoText button, now I see the test. Remember when this wasn't loaded in the startup folder, that wasn't there, and now it is. So you can take macros. You can, and if there's a speed key, the speed key will travel with it. you can add buttons, and you can put auto text entries, and you can put those all inside one. And it was a blank file, right? There was nothing in it, but it contained the code for all those other things. Then as long as that file ends up in your startup folder, then all of those things become available to the user. So if I wanted to update everybody, I could edit that template. I could add more auto text entries, more buttons, whatever I want. And then I could simply overwrite that file on everyone else's computer. Now you can redirect that folder. Like if I was sitting in a network, if I only ever used my computer in the office and I was connected to a network, I could redirect all those startup folders to some network location. Everybody needs their own, by the way. That's not something you can share among users. So each user would need their own startup folder. But that might make it easier if they were all, in one folder structure on the server. Then you could just go paste, and put all those things in there, and it'd be very easy. Ultimately, it's not that hard. Once you know where the folder is, it's not that hard to get to it and drop a copy of a global template in there. Now, in terms of like making custom ribbons and such, you can make custom ribbons, but it's much more difficult, and it's beyond the scope of this class. So you'd have to do some VBA programming, and it would make your head hurt unless you're a VBA programmer and you like that stuff. But beyond the scope of this class, but it is possible to create custom ribbons as opposed to buttons on the quick access toolbar. It's just way more involved. So you're probably better off sticking with the easy things that I just showed you, and anybody can do that. Just remember that the vehicle to hold those things is and if you remember, it was a .dotm template, which a DOTM template is a macro-enabled template in Word. So, and again, to create one of those, I hit File, Save As, Browse. And then at the bottom of the screen, instead of saving as a Word document, I switch to a Word macro-enabled template. It must be a macro-enabled template for this to work. Once I record all the stuff I want in it, I stick a copy in the startup folder. Next time I open Word, all of that stuff simply loads up and I'm ready to go. So I hope that made sense. And now you know how to share those things with other people in your office, which is a great idea. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, Baron. This video was created by Ivy Gray from WordRake and Baron Hindley from Affinity Consulting, who both trained as lawyers and are now Microsoft Word and Outlook enthusiasts and productivity experts. This video is part of a series. To sign up to receive tech tips and training videos via email, please visit wordrake.com/tech-tips. Let's take Word to the next level. If you want your firm or your legal department to write with one voice, then you need a house style guide. Editors and publishing companies use these guides to make sure they have a unified image, and so should you. By sharing your specialized dictionaries, fixes, and macros, you get everyone on the same page. Another way to create a uniform voice is to build editing software into your drafting process. WordRake works in Microsoft Word and Outlook. It goes beyond Microsoft's built-in spelling and grammar checkers to help you reduce legalese and wordy writing through complex, patented algorithms. Try it today. If you'd like to learn more, sign up to receive tech tips and training videos at wordrake.com/tech-tips. When you're ready to take your work to the next level, try WordRake. WordRake is clear and concise editing software that will improve your writing while respecting legally operative phrases and key legal content. It's a finely tuned collaborator that will help you satisfy clients, win more business, and do more high-value work. WordRake works in Microsoft Word and Outlook. It goes beyond Microsoft's built-in spelling and grammar checkers to help you reduce legalese and wordy writing. It uses complex, patented algorithms to find useless words, dull phrases, weak lead-ins, cliches, and high-level grammatical problems, then offers suggested edits in line. WordRake's document will look just like a smart colleague with an English degree has revised your work using track changes. In 3 simple steps, you'll have a better document or email. Try it today at wordrake.com/trial.